Hello guys, what's up? And today we're going to be talking about World of Tanks, and this particular topic is something that I've had my opinions on for a long time, but I've never voiced them. But now I believe that it is time for me to explain and try to cover this issue of basically the pay-to-win aspects of the game and how they affect us and what exactly they are, and how we might be able to possibly fix them. Now, these are all just my silly personal opinions, so if you disagree, that's great. Anyways, the first thing we're going to be talking about is, first off, we have to understand that World of Tanks might be a free-to-play game, but Wargaming is out to make money. They're out to make money, and, it's their job to create a product that's going to make them money. Now, the game is free to play, but Wargaming, wouldn't be a billion-dollar company if they weren't doing something right. So, the Jagdpanzer E100, I'll just have this up here as a backdrop because we're going to use this as an example later. But the first thing I want to talk about is premium ammunition, better known as gold rounds. So, gold rounds have been in the game forever, and the thing about gold rounds is that way back in the day, around when I first started playing the game, you could only get premium ammunition with gold. You couldn't buy them with any credits, and when you think about it, that's why they're called gold ammo, right? So, we have to be mindful that Wargaming changed this many years ago. I don't know exactly how long it is, I want to say maybe 3 years ago. They actually changed it so that you could buy gold rounds with credits. Now, this is actually a very smart move because before, gold had actually been pay to win because the only way to buy gold ammo was with gold, and the only way to buy gold was with real money. So basically, those rounds, you were literally emptying your pockets. You had to use real money in order to buy premium ammo. Now that's not the case, so you may be saying, well, it can't be pay to win because you can use credits and anybody can get credits, right? Wrong. The reason that you're wrong is because these gold rounds usually cost anywhere from 3 to 6 times that of the standard ammunition. So if we actually look here at the Jagdpanzer E100, we can find the shell cost right here. It's 2,200 2,200 credits every time you fire a standard round. Now, whenever you load the heat rounds, you're paying, about 3.5 times as much whenever you fire, which maybe this isn't the best example. Let's go look at something that might actually be a bit more dramatic in its change. T-54, for example. The standard ammunition is 1230, pretty expensive for considering how low the actual pen is on these rounds. 201mm penetration, but you load the gold, you get 330 pen, but you're paying just over 4 times as much. Almost 5 times as much, actually. Now, it's a perfect example because with the standard rounds, the gun is pretty mediocre, right? It's got a decent rate of fire, it's got okay-ish dispersion values, it's got a pretty good rate of fire. It just doesn't have much penetration, but when you load the heat, you can basically become a tier 2 medium tank, and you can pen everything. Because this tank can get about a 6-second reload with the right crew skills. So, now that we've talked about that, I want to talk about the actual differences between the types of ammunition and then a few of the actual exceptions in the game that I'm going to show you pretty soon. So, here on the T-54, we have standard armor piercing. Let me talk about standard armor piercing for a minute. When you fire armor piercing at a target, something called normalization is going to occur when you fire an armor piercing or an APCR shell. On armor piercing rounds, it reduces the effective angle on armor that you hit by 5 degrees, as we can see here. Original angle 59 degrees, effective angle 54 degrees. So, you get 5 degrees off whatever you're shooting at, so it makes the armor less effective than it would be if you were firing heat, for example. You can actually see this in action. Right here we have 199 millimeters of effective armor. Compare, load the heat, go to the same spot, and as we can see, the armor has gone up to 230 effective. So it does make quite a difference. Now if we go to a tank that has premium as APCR, just the Tiger 1 for example, as we can see, it's 2 degrees. So, as we can see, armor piercing is going to be having, your standard 5 degrees of normalization. I forget, you got to change it right here. But you have to have your standard 5 degrees of normalization, when you're shooting at something with angled armor, and then with APCR it has 2 degrees. So, the effective armor is actually going to increase when you're shooting at that sloped armor with something like APCR instead of the standard rounds. So this is a drawback of using premium ammunition, although usually the benefits are going to greatly outweigh the drawbacks, namely the increased penetration. On the Tiger here it's only about 34 millimeters, but on other tanks the difference is more substantial. Let's just take a look at the Jag Tiger here. 276 standard millimeters of penetration, 352. That's a difference of almost about 70, maybe 65. And it's a crazy difference if you think about it, compared to the only, 30 or so of the standard Tiger. Next, we're going to talk about something called heat ammunition. And heat ammunition is commonly used on most of the Tier 10 tanks, with a few exceptions like the Mouse, the Panzer 7, and the stock gun on the E100. But most tanks have heat as their premium ammunition at Tier 10. And we'll actually take a look at the Object 140, for example. As you can see, the standard penetration 264, heat penetration 330. It's actually the exact same ammo as on the T-54. But as you can see, heat actually has no normalization whatsoever. So when you're firing at this, it's going to be the full effectiveness of the armor that you're shooting at. And another drawback of heat is that it has absolutely awful effectiveness against spaced armor. There's one more thing that I want to talk about, and it's the special cases that we sometimes see in the game. For example, if we look at the OHO and its 10cm gun, the standard rounds and the premium rounds are both armor piercing. They're both standard armor piercing rounds, and thus are basically just straight up better than the standard rounds because they don't come with the penalty of losing that 3 degrees of normalization. As we can see, it's got the standard AP for both the standard and the premium ammunition, and in this regard, it's actually going to be just straight up better ammunition because it doesn't suffer that 3 degree penalty to its normalization like APCR does. And another thing that I want to talk about is the Type 5 and the Type 4 Heavy. Here's where we're going to start to see a little bit of controversy coming out. Now the Type 5 Heavy has been on the game for a while, right? It didn't used to have this big derp gun that some of you might be used to seeing. It used to have a 140mm gun with 600 alpha damage. This gun had the standard armor piercing rounds for both, and the premium ammo pen just was not that good. 282 pen on a Tier 10 gun is just kind of shit, right? Well, that's when they gave the Type 5 a massive buff when they realized that it was underpowered as hell. As we can see, they added this derp gun right here. It's a 150mm howitzer with 2 kinds of ammunition. Premium and Standard, and they're both HE. And on this tank, I believe that these rounds are definitely going to be pay to win, because there's no drawback to using them besides the cost. It has the exact same penetration, it has the exact same everything, it just has more alpha damage, and that's just stupid. Another example of this kind of increased alpha premium is on the SU-100Y. However, SU-100Y makes it balanced because it has less penetration but more damage, which I guess that makes sense, right? We're actually going to look at another tank, the AR-44 with the 100mm cannon right here, and it actually has an APCR round with significantly better penetration and more alpha damage without any kind of reload penalty. So that round is kind of pay to win too, man, when you think about it. When you have extra damage, extra pen, extra shell velocity, has the normalization penalty that I talked about, but the overwhelmingly greater penetration is going to far outweigh this. It's honestly kind of disconcerting to see this in the game because, you know, the AR-44 already, you know, it's not really that good of a tank at all. You know, it's got pretty poor armor. Very poor armor, especially on the sides and the rear and stuff. But it has that gun to make up for it. The Type 5, however, is something completely different. The armor on that tank is absolutely ridiculous. I'd say it's contender for the second most armored tank in the game. Not quite the first. I think the mouse takes the cake there. But this tank is absolutely ridiculous. The armor is 270mm thick all across the front, except for the very front is actually a little bit thinner. However, these cheeks here are not a weak spot anymore, like they are on the Tier 9 tank. And the front of the turret is 290 effective basically everywhere, or greater basically everywhere. And it's absolutely insane in my opinion. Even the cupola is difficult to penetrate. It is weaker, but it is difficult to penetrate still. It's 210mm all around. Even the rear of the tank is 150mm thick. I mean, you can angle this tank like this, and you can still have better frontal armor than a lot of heavy tanks still do. It's honestly just pretty ridiculous in my opinion. When you have a tank like this trundling its way around the battlefield with a massive howitzer, you don't even need to aim for weak spots or worry about penetration at all. You can just pull the trigger, hit wherever you want, and do 600 damage every single time you fire the gun. Is that fair at all? I don't think it is, and I think it's pay to win. I don't like the Type 5 Heavy. It has far too thick armor, and it has a far too crazy howitzer in order to be in the game. I know it kind of fits with the old tanks in the line, the lower tanks in the line, so it does make sense to give it some sort of howitzer. But they need to chill with this premium ammunition, because I admit, I play the Type 4 Heavy, I load all gold in that thing. But am I going to cry about the Type 5 being overpowered? Yes, I am, because it is. I'm not going to cry about the Type 4, because that thing is not nearly as good. Yes, it has the derp gun. However, it at least has some weak points on it. It has a 230mm hatch there, and these cheeks are 200mm instead of 270mm thick like they are in the Tier 10 tank. So at least you have some cheeks that can be exploited. And the turret is not quite as thick either. So at least it does have some cheek weak points, even though the armor still is pretty strong. It's just not as strong as the Type 5 Heavy nearly is. Pay to win at its finest in those derp guns. In conclusion, do I think that premium rounds are pay to win? For the most part, no. In the hands of a good player, they're going to make them more effective, but you're not going to be like a noob player and load a bunch of premium ammo, and you can't load a bunch of it, especially if you're a free-to-play player with no premium account, no premium tanks, because you're simply just going to not be able to afford it, and you're going to run out of money. You cannot afford to fire premium rounds all the time because they just cost so much more. You can fire 5 premium rounds, 1 premium round for 5 standard rounds in cost. So in conclusion, is it pay to win? Don't really think so. I'm going to move on to the next topic that I want to talk about. And that is going to be premium consumables. And I'm going to keep this kind of short because I do want to go over premium tanks as well. So, I'm just going to pull up the T-54 here for comparison. Now, every tank has 3 consumable slots. And there are a few different kind of premium consumables that you can use, and for the most part it's going to include first aid kits, the large first aid kits, the premium automatic fire extinguishers, and the large repair kits. USSR tanks have Lend-Lease oil. Chinese tanks here have, and USSR tanks have remove speed governors and quality oil for the Chinese, and I think that some of the American tanks have some sort of 105 octane oil, 100 octane gasoline, and 105 octane gasoline. However, those aren't really what I want to talk about because those are alright by me. The thing I want to talk about is like the case of cola, or food, as it's commonly known. As far as the food goes, it's nation restricted, so each nation has a different food. Case of cola for the T-54E1, or any other American tank for that matter. For Germans, it's chocolate. For the Czechs, it's booch tea, I believe. For China, it's improved combat rations. For USSR, it's extra combat rations. For Sweden, it's some kind of pastry, coffee with cinnamon buns. For Japan, it's, I believe, onigiri. France, it's strong coffee, and UK, it's tea and pudding and tea. There we go. Did I miss anybody? Don't think so. Anyways, premium consumables basically increase your crew skills by 10%, which basically means all of your stats get a 5% bonus. So, if we look at this E50M right here, we can see these stock stats like the accuracy, the DPM, some of the traverse. If we add chocolate, as you can see, it increases the stats of everything. Reload time, dispersion, gun handling, DPM, the tank traverse, ground resistances, turret traverse, and view range. So it's kind of hard to be justifying this, especially when they're not interchangeable between nations. Because the thing about, stuff like, what was I thinking of? Yeah, the repair kits and the med kits and stuff like that, you can use them on anything. But for the food, it's nation specific. Another thing about the food is that every time that you use it, every time you go into battle, you have to get a new one. Like, if you don't use your repair kit or your extinguisher, you get to keep it. Carry it to the next game. But for chocolate, or any other food, once you exit the battle, you have to buy a whole new one. And each of them, not exactly sure how much they cost. It's either 10,000 or 20,000 credits. The point is, they cost a lot of money, even more than a few premium rounds on a lot of tanks. So every time, you're going to be losing that money every time you go into battle. Not just when you use it, because you're always using it. That's all I have to say about that. Next, I'm going to be talking about premium tanks. Now, a lot of people, they've been talking about some of these new tanks that have been introduced into the game, such as the Scorpion G, tanks like the Defender, tanks like the Patriot, which have all been solid tanks, and they've kind of been a lot better than the old ones, especially the old tanks with premium matchmaking like the IS-6, the T-34-3, the Super Persian. With these recent matchmaking changes, and even in those tanks, you're always basically in Tier 9 games, whereas you're in a tank that is mostly balanced against playing against Tier 7 and 6 opponents, for the most part. And then you're kind of wondering, why do we have, a tank like the Defender might not be here? Anyways, we have tanks like the Defender, which is basically almost like a better IS-3, I'd say arguably a better gun. Very similar gun with higher alpha damage, but worse accuracy. Pretty much the same thing as an IS-3, just with better armor and similar mobility and a fairly similar gun, fairly similarly good gun handling. And you could pay money for it, and anybody can buy this with real money. Like some noob with 1,000 battles can grab a Defender, go into battle. Well, you have to grind for an IS-3 unless you use free XP, but that's a whole other debate. In my opinion, are these pay to win? And I say absolutely not, because these tanks are only as good as the person playing them. If you're an idiot that drives outside onto enemy guns, you will die no matter what. These tanks are not broken OP. They're just simply good. Maybe a little too good, but they're definitely not overpowered. Especially not with the current Tier 8 matchmaking state, when you're basically in Tier 10 every single game you play in a Tier 8 tank. Doesn't matter what you're in. You could be in a Defender, you can be in a T-44, you can be in a Centurion 1. You're always going to be in Tier 10 pretty much. With some rare exceptions, of course. But do I think that these are pay to win? No. However, I'm not done. There's a few other tanks that we need to talk about, and that are the mostly lower tier tanks, such as the Panzer B2, Tier 4 premium German heavy tank. And this tank is a tank that is stupid. Just simply absolutely stupid. And it's been on sale before in the past, and you've been able to get it from those supply crate things that we had during the holiday sales. But this tank is ridiculous. The matchmaking is specially set up so this tank will never see beyond Tier 4 tanks. How is that fair? Especially since the tank has very, very thick armor for your Tier 4 vehicle. Very, very thick armor for a Tier 4 vehicle. Imagine playing against Tier 3 and Tier 2. Well, I don't think you can see Tier 2s, but you can see Tier 3s. Imagine seeing Tier 3 tanks in this tank and having no way to penetrate it while it simply rips you to shreds with a gun that reloads every single second. The tank literally has a 2-second reload. Right here. And that's without a gun rammer. I guess you can't mount a gun rammer on it. But what if you're using chocolate and stuff? You can get your reload down to 2 seconds in this tank. Full crew skills. Like, what is going on here, man? A lot of people will play this tank and will just spam premium rounds out of the gun over and over and over and rip Tier 3 tanks to shreds. What about the Panzer IIJ? I don't know if you guys know about the Panzer IIJ. Panzer IIJ. This tank in the World of Tanks community is known as the Tier 3 Mouse. This tank has 80 millimeters of armor on the front of the vehicle on a Tier 3 tank. 99% of the opponents that you're going to be meeting at a Tier 3 game, and even Tier 4 tanks, will not penetrate this vehicle anywhere. Because having 90 millimeters of effective armor everywhere when you angle is simply monstrous on this tank. This is better armor than some of the Tier 10 medium tanks. Like maybe the Leopard 1 or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Fortunately, this tank is exceedingly rare, and personally I've hardly ever seen it on the battlefield. it does exist. This one, in my opinion, was actually worse. Panzer 38H 375. Or 735, sorry. This tank is known as the Micro Mouse. Why is it known as the Micro Mouse? Well, it has 45 millimeters of armor pretty much everywhere, and it's a tier 2 tank. That means the maximum tier that it can see is tier 3. And this tank has 50 millimeters or greater armor simply everywhere, and most tier 2 and even 3 premium rounds will struggle to penetrate this vehicle. Frontally, especially when he angles. The thing is, it has no weak points. The armor is 40 millimeters or greater, except on the top. Everywhere. Everywhere. Simply everywhere. The thing is, what are you going to do if you're in a tier 2 tank and you're a new player to the game? You probably don't have any premium ammo loaded and you probably are a stock tank. You simply cannot penetrate this thing. And there are plenty of replays out there on YouTube that you can look at to simply prove it. That this tank is absolutely overpowered and broken. And this tank right here is pay to win. Indeed. Fortunately, it is pretty rare, as far as I know. Most people don't have one. But if you have one, this tank is certainly pay to win. So is the Panzer II-J. So is the old Su-85I, if that's even still a thing anymore. Haven't seen one in a while. Su-76I, you know, all that kind of stuff. Seal clubbing is an absolutely disgusting trend. Experienced players, like myself, load up a tier 2 or tier 3 vehicle and just go to town on noobs that can't kill you. Because you know how to play the game far better than they can, and you load gold, and they don't stand a chance against you. Because you're a far more experienced player with much better statistics. They simply cannot beat you. One more tank I have to talk about before I end this, and it's going to be a French tier 5 tank and a French tier 3 tank. So, the 105 LFH-18B2. We can't talk about broken premiums without talking about this tank. This tank is a tier 5 premium artillery, and it is one of the most broken tanks in the game. It has a 105mm howitzer, and it looks like it still has heat and AP ammunition, and it's unchanged from its previous state. It has a 9-second reload with a 105mm howitzer that can shoot anywhere on the map. It's absolutely, positively broken OP. This tank is ridiculous. The bane of tier 5 players everywhere, and usually it's played by seal clubbers. People that just want to fuck enemies up, not have to worry about getting killed. One more French tank. Some of you may be familiar with it already. The FCM-36 Pack 40. Tier 3 French tank destroyer. Looks like a shit barn. It is a shit barn. It's got absolutely awful mobility. It's got absolutely awful armor. It's got absolutely awful turret traverse. Or gun traverse. Gun is pretty good. And the damn thing has 400 meters of base view range. Don't believe me? 400 meters base view range on a tier 3 tank. Imagine having a great crew mounting either optics or even binoculars to push your view range well over 500 meters. And into the realm of ridiculousness at tier 3, you can literally outspot any other tank at this tier with a 50% crew, most likely. It's disgusting. Really is. This tank should not be allowed to be in the game. It's ridiculous with its view range. The view range should be nerfed by 50 at least. Even then it would still be good for a tier 3 tank. Anyways, yeah. That's my 2 cents about pay to win in World of Tanks, and to be fair to Wargaming, it's their game. They can do whatever they want with it, and they gotta make money somehow. But I believe they made some decisions that are very, very questionable and push players away instead of bringing them in, which is what they should be focusing on, is getting new players. And in just a couple of months, we're going to be seeing the biggest update in years. World of Tanks 1.0. Graphics engine overhaul, tank overhaul, and even just a few weeks we're going to be seeing a Soviet tech tree overhaul. I actually think the test server might be up today. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe tomorrow. But I encourage everybody to go out and check out the new Soviet tanks. There should be a tech tree somewhere around here. Check out the World of Tanks subreddit. Check out the World of Tanks forums. Anywhere, whatever's your source of World of Tanks information. The Armored Patrol is a great blog source for mostly reliable leaks and stuff like that for upcoming patches. And I'm very, very, very excited for the next patch. You know, we're getting several new Tier 10 vehicles, and I'm incredibly excited about that. The T10 is going to lead to something different. The Object 430 is going to become a Tier 9 tank. I wonder what it's going to be like. And we're also going to be seeing a new Tier 10 after the 430 version 2 with the rear-mounted turret. So, anyways guys, this has been a World of Tanks video. Thank you for watching. If you're feeling generous today, like and subscribe. And I'm definitely going to be seeing you guys some more as I'm going to be uploading some more videos. And also check out my Twitch live streams. I'm going to be trying to do that a little bit. And if you guys would like to check it out, I will link my channel down there in the description. So have your fights in the comments. Is World of Tanks pay to win or not? I'm not really going to say yes or no to that. But there are some aspects of the game that I believe are pay to win. But for the most part, Wargaming has done a pretty good job of keeping it fairly fair. Quite fair to free-to-play players. And a lot of the times, the players that we see that have low stats and are not very good at the game just need to take some time to study, watch a few videos here and there. Just learn, get a basic idea of how to play the game. And as far as like bots go, I'm not going to have any comment on that right now. That's a whole nother video. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you for watching.